I left with a bit of a cliffhanger, but this week is the week for the big cut. But first, my circle isn't exactly centered. I don't know how. Alright, to briefly get everybody up to speed before we get too far into this, we last left when I had mated the sliding canopy frame to the fuselage and even got it rolling back and forth. That was exciting, but that just marks the very beginning of this adventure. That frame eventually has to be mated to an acrylic canopy. That canopy has to have several cuts made to it before we can even begin that process. The most notable of those is called the big cut. That's where we separate the canopy, or the back half, from the windscreen, or the front half. Even well before the big cut, we have to trim the sides and back of this thing, not only to have it be a little easier to work with, but more importantly, to give us some practice in cutting acrylic. It's incredibly difficult stuff to cut. You gotta make sure your shop is warm, you gotta make sure you have the right tools and the cutting discs, and you gotta make sure that you're experienced enough and know what you're doing, hence making several intermediary cuts before the final ones. To start here, I'm going to slowly trim off some of the sides and back. By the time I'm done, I will have trimmed the sides and back roughly 2 to 3, maybe even 4 times each. However, this is again needed for the practice and to make sure that I am landing at the final dimension that I need. To know where these cuts land, we have some mold lines molded into the canopy itself, but they're really rough and they're hard to see. I've also gone ahead and marked the center line of the canopy the best I can. All right, I've spoken too much, let's get to it. God, I make the weirdest faces when I'm grinding. It should be noted, I am absolutely unapologetically stealing from the vast amounts of information that's already out there on this process. A lot of people, much smarter, much more determined, and much more patient than I am, have devised these methods. There is no need for me to attempt to reinvent the wheel here. My only hope through all this is that I can execute it in a manner that's going to allow me to have a product that isn't going to drive me nuts in the end. All right, I have gone as far as to replicate things that I've seen on the internet almost to a comical degree, trying to utilize all of my research in order to not screw this up. It's terrifying. The first step here, according to the instructions, is to drill a hole in the middle of this thing, right smack dab in the middle, for the handle for the slider clasp. That hole largely dictates the position of the entire canopy. So in the back of my head is, if I get this hole off, the canopy possibly won't even fit the fuselage. I've checked and rechecked every measurement I can, and I'm fairly confident that where it sits now is where I need said hole. I will note there are some dimensional differences in my frame, my roll bar, my entire setup as compared to what's prescribed by the instructions and the plans. Quite frankly, I don't think I have the skill, the patience, the tools, the strength necessary to get it perfect. I just don't. So I'm going to proceed with the idea that a lot of this will fix in post, meaning with my chosen method of affixing the frame to the canopy, which is Sikaflex, basically a canopy adhesive, I have the ability to do some fudging, and I can use different size spacers to apply different gaps to different areas to ensure that everything matches up, hiding those dimensional differences to a little bit. Now, they're not huge. They typically are about a 1/16, at most an 1/8 of an inch. And I just feel that this is safer, better, quicker, all of the above, than sitting there and fighting this frame and trying to bend it, possibly doing some irreversible damage. There are many advantages to Sikaflex that I have read about, and this is one of them. It's why I've chosen to go this route. The other, I don't have to drill like 20,000 holes for rivets in this clear frame. Every hole is a chance at a chip or a crack, and that scares the daylights out of me. Speaking of which, it's time to drill a hole. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can't, I suppose, start in on this canopy. I'm out of ways to delay. I should probably note, I've worked with acrylic more than most people, I'd say. I used to work with it a lot in production, and I don't know if that's helpful or not, because I know how quickly it can crack and chip. I know how finicky it is, so going into this, I probably have a bit more anxiety than most. That's a relief. That went well. Things worked like they should have. The drill clutch tripped a couple times. Just let me know that that drill bit was about to grab, but luckily having it cranked all the way down, it gave way. We went slow. Nice clean hole. Starting to get things lined up. The hole which I cut and the piece that goes in there, they want to keep popping apart every time I move this thing. So I fabricated a little stay, if you will, from the offcut of the hole dozer and some 1/4 inch MDF that I'm using as essentially a giant washer, and then a bolt that goes through that to keep it all together. I won't tell you how long that took to fabricate, but it was a long time. Now I've got to start clamping this thing together. And lucky me, I just got back from the clamp store and bought a lifetime supply of clamps because I knew this was coming. I'm going to go ahead and get these things clamped so that I can mark where I'm going to cut next. That look right there is the look of someone who realizes he just messed up. It's gonna happen to you at some point in your build. You're gonna do something stupid. If you're lucky, you didn't do something stupid right after proclaiming that you've checked and rechecked your measurements. If you're really lucky, you didn't do something stupid on film in front of literally dozens of people. If you're me, you're not so lucky. I still don't know how I did it, and if I can offer any defense, it's that measuring this thing is tough. You have to do it with string, and it's asymmetrical, and it moves on you. It's like trying to find the center of a freaking marshmallow. A big, giant, clear plastic marshmallow. I have no interest in creating dramatic effect here if it can be avoided, so I'll let you know that as of now, which is several weeks from when this was filmed, the problem has not reared its head again, or at least not in a very noticeable way. It may contribute in part to some difficulties faced on this canopy later on, but those also may be a part of the fact that a slider canopy is incredibly difficult to set up. I would say if anything, problems faced later on are more closely related to not spending some additional time getting my frame just a little more perfect than having this hole approximately 1/4 inch off. I'm going to make an initial trim and take some more off the sides. I'm taking more off of this side. Somehow my circle isn't exactly centered. I don't know how. I'm going to take an initial trim and I guess even up the sides, and that'll take it down to, I don't know, about 2 steps away from final height this way. Then I'm going to take some off the back, but we'll have to remeasure once I finish this cut. I am a little flabbergasted. I don't know how I got here. My middle hole is off. Something that I measured probably a dozen different times in different ways. Once the canopy was seated and we got things clamped, it became obvious that it was off. Not a small amount. I mean, it's not huge, but when you're dealing with something like this, every 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch can really start to throw geometry off. And that is where my head is at, which is if I can get the windshield separated from the canopy, this back part, once it's separated, it kind of wants to lay flat. And the frame gives it much of its structure. And so I think having it off a little bit is going to be negligible by the time it's clamped and glued to the frame. The forward part has a lot of shape to it. But if I separate those two and I leave myself enough margin, I think by the time I get them to the plane, I can get the two to fit together. That's my hope. If not, I'll be buying a new canopy. Again, I'm flabbergasted as to how I got here. I'm gonna get this thing flipped. It's going this way. And I gotta get it situated and kind of clamp it down to the table, I think. And then I'll start to think about cutting it. I don't think I'm quite there yet. Okay, I'm definitely not quite there yet.
See you on the coast now, and out the window with your guard down, pulling me into the waves up for days, start to fray like a loose ground. You're not the king of California. 3 a.m. there's nothing for you. When you start to reveal nothing's really what you feel, I could've warned you. I know, you know, I know, you'll never let me go. You're such a smoke show, baby, when you burn low, weaving through my mind like a 70s Camino. You're such a smoke show, I can't seem to keep cold, dancing in the glow, just watching your smoke.
So here's how I see this going down. In theory, as much as I would like to just single-handedly cut all the way across, I want to further support it on either side, and so I'm going to start the cuts up the side so that I can get those clear, and then actually clamp in 2 2x4s sitting on rails on either side so that it reduces that spring tension for this thing to just kind of spring out on me. Once those are clamped in, I'll finish the cut, and I'm going to tape behind my cut because I don't think I can really get clamps in there, just to, again, keep this thing together for as long as possible. Eventually it is going to come apart. I mean, that's the point. And I guess I'll just, I'll deal with how that happens when I get there. Sounds like a flawless plan. It's in 2 parts. It looks good. Part of my inability to celebrate is, again, hanging over my head, is that danged hole, and wondering if that's going to come and affect me at some point. Although I think I'll be able to see soon here, now that it's in 2 parts, how it fits. The cut itself went fantastic, and honestly, I owe it all to that little Ryobi saw. Now, in the past, I've joked about my green tools and how wonderful they are, but this thing is truly, it couldn't have asked for a better tool. It's lightweight, it's nimble. The throttle on it reminds me of like an RC car I used to have. Like, you can adjust it from a few dozen RPM up to 20,000, and you have an immense amount of control. Throughout that cut, I was probably only between 20 and 30% of the power that it has, just to keep it under control. It does come with a number of discs, and one says plastic on it. I did not use the plastic disc. The way that the abrasive is glued to the plastic disc creates a bigger kerf in the cut, which I didn't want. And it also allows that cut to kind of swing out on you by cutting sideways, which I was aiming for a cut that would track well. And so I used the metal disc, which is nice and thin, has a razor thin kerf, and it allows you to kind of set a track and then just stick to it. As a result, there is very little cleanup needed on this cut. I can't wait to sort of peel the plastic back a little bit, get some additional protective tape on there, start to dress up that cut, and then see how these parts fit. Before I get running off too far, I still do have the sides to cut off the canopy side of it. I need to trim those back a little further. This will be the second or third cut on the sides, but not even the last. I think I will go ahead and cut it back one additional time before we call those finished. Clamp run, seriously, already ran out. It seems to fit quite well. And the front seems to fit quite well. The question is, will they fit together quite well? That's the concern that I have about this hole being a little off. I think it'll be okay. That's it for today. Don't worry about that dude too much. While he's extremely tired, he's not overly down. After all, the canopy is in 2 pieces and the cut looks good, and that's what he aimed to do. And now as I sit here with a few weeks of additional knowledge, I know that while this canopy continues to provide challenges, it also continues to progress towards completion. Of course, if you want to see that, you gotta be subscribed, and you gotta tune in next time on Ryan Flies. Thank you for watching.